watching, I got this luxurious job, and let me tell you, as part of this luxurious job, I get to interview and talk to and meet some pretty wonderful people. So I am this big fan of DJs and DJ culture. I'm a real big fan of a guy here sitting next to me, Gregg Gillis, and we know him as Girl Talk. And we're going to talk a little bit with him today, and we are at the House of Blues because tonight he's going to be performing here. I don't think he can get a ticket, but we certainly want to make sure that we talk with some interesting people in and around Boston when they make it here. If you want to ask a question, just go ahead and hit me up with a tweet. I'm at Dean Elmore, one word or one phrase, at Dean Elmore on Twitter, and we will look to see if we can get a couple of questions in. Or if you want, if you're following this on the Ustream, just go right to the chat, and we got some folks here who will be taking a look at that and could give us a sense of any questions. So I want to start off by saying thanks, and what I want to figure out is, I heard this rumor that you were a biomedical engineer, that you're a guy who finished college, you were out working in the world, and like all of a sudden you decided to quit your day job.
Yeah.
Give us a sense. What was that about?
Yeah, it was a little bit less all of a sudden. It was more, it was kind of all of a sudden. It was just like, my whole life I was involved in music. Started playing in bands when I was like 14, 15. Right. And a lot of the music that I really liked and a lot of the musicians I looked up to were people who weren't making money off it necessarily. Some people a little bit, some people none. And so every project I started, there was never an idea to make a career out of it or anything like that.
Right.
So I, when I started bands, it was always just for the fun of it. And I push it hard and work on it hard, and I want it to be interesting and innovative, but at the same time, not really so concerned about, making a living off it. So that being said, kind of when I started doing the Girl Talk thing, I went to school and I was doing engineering, and that was definitely priority number one. And,
right.
That took up, naturally all of my time. And, during summer and winter breaks, I would tour, and during the 4 years in college, I put out 2 albums and just did what I could do. And, some of my friends were involved in music, and I went to Case Western in Cleveland, and there's an art school attached there, Cleveland Institute of Art. So just a lot of friends from that community doing music. We would book these tours for ourselves on the side during breaks and things like that. And even weekends, going to Cincinnati or going to New York or wherever. So, yeah, it kind of built up, and there was a little bit of a cult following happening. But, again, like, very far away from ever really making money off it.
What kind of music?
It was the same sort of stuff that I do now, cutting up pop music, but it was a little bit more experimental back then. So it was just a bit more far out. It wasn't as accessible. And after school, I really got, went to get a job, and it wasn't like music was failing. This was like always the game plan,
Right.
So I got the day job, and I actually enjoyed the day job fine. It was good at engineering sort of thing. And
were you in Cleveland?
This was in Pittsburgh, where I'm from. So I moved back to Pittsburgh, and this was like a sleep science job, and 9 to 5. And I'm not great with like getting up early, but I got used to it, and the job was cool. And during that time, I kept doing music and would do weekend shows and things like that. And then after maybe 2 or 2.5 years on the job, I put out my 3rd album. And that was the first one that really kind of caught on. And
which one was that?
That's called Night River.
Oh yeah, Night River, sure.
And blogs started talking about it, and it just started snowballing. You could see it. You'd see the internet. Just the smaller sources, and then that leads to the bigger ones, and also the magazines catch up.
Right.
And pretty much once the the magazines and stuff start dropping reviews, all of a sudden I got like offers to get a booking agent, and this and that, and everything just started moving a bit. So I kept a day job and kept it going, and was thinking this is fun, that this is happening. We'll see where it goes. And I spent about a year on the job when I was doing shows every weekend, and they were selling out and flying out every Friday, doing a show Friday, Saturday, and that could be as extreme as like going to Seattle on Saturday or going to London on Friday.
Really?
One time I did a show opening for Beck and I flew out from Pittsburgh to London on Friday and got back in time for work on Monday. So that's what was going on. And then after a year, it's kind of like, really like the band for Girl Talk shows is so great, I kind of had to pick one or the other. So it wasn't even like I was going out on a limb.
Right.
When I quit, it was kind of like I have to quit one, or I either quit music or quit this. So I thought I'd try, the music thing for a minute. And, luckily it's really, kept going for that's been, 3 or 4 years now.
Right. Wow. Glad you did it, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, I think it was the sort of thing where even, when I quit, I was really thinking that, because especially music, fans and various things, it comes and goes so fast. And people can be fickle, and there's always a new hot thing, and then the other thing's the old thing, and it's tired now. So I was really thinking, when I quit, it was never like, I'm going to make a career out of this. It was always like 1 year would be amazing to just be able to live for a year and be on the road and tour. And then after a year went by, and this is the things I was like telling my experience too,
Right.
you know. And like after a year goes by, it's like, so you know, when you going back to that job, and it was like, well, you know, it's getting bigger somehow,
Right,
and
right.
and then it's like maybe if another year we'll see where it's at, and it's like just kept growing, and even now, you know, we're at 3 or 4 years later, it's still the shows are getting bigger, and the
Sure.
crew I travel with is getting bigger, and it's
Right.
been, you know, full time. And also, you know, when I was quitting, I was thinking, man, it's gonna be, you know, vacation time, just having fun, and
Yeah.
definitely love what I do, but it's, you know, I wish I had more time, you know.
Is that right?
I just, yeah, I'm just like always needing more time for it, developing the show or developing music. So,
Right.
and I think that's just the nature of the way I work too. I just love to stay busy and keep
Right.
going with things.
So you took a bit of a leap. Did you feel like you were taking a leap when you said, all right, I'm going to go away from this nice, stable circumstance, won't have my parents on my back, and I'm going to do this? It was a leap. What made you decide to make that leap?
Yeah, I mean, it was really kind of just the demand for shows, because it was kind of like, I quit in June. I made the decision maybe by March or something of 2007.
Right.
So by March of 2007, I had used up like 8 of my 10 vacation days already, and then I was getting offers to go to Australia to play shows, I got offers to go to Europe, and it was kind of like, man, it'd be really blowing a big opportunity to not do this.
Right.
And, you know, it was tough because like I said, everything was falling in line with the way I envisioned my life, you know, in terms of the job was going on. You know,
Right.
living in Pittsburgh, everything was going well. So this actually, it was hard to come to terms with the fact that this actually was making money. You know,
Right.
it took me a while to be like, wow, I actually can quit. It seemed like it shouldn't happen. It can't happen. So yeah, that's why I think it even took me a whole year, because it was just,
Right.
you know, the circumstances are kind of extreme. You know, I just didn't really have a day off for a year, where it was just literally traveling every day that I wasn't working the day job.
Yeah. Your goal to keep doing this, to just make music, or have you got some sort of long-term goal in mind for yourself with this?
Not necessarily. You know, I really think day by day and month by month. I definitely have ideas for the next year and things like that. But
Right.
even, you know, from the moment that I quit the job until now, I try to never really make decisions about sustaining it as a career. Not that I think there's anything wrong with that for other people, but for me,
Right, right.
it's always been about like, what's the best decision now? I don't ever want to make a decision now that's based on, you know, sustaining this long term that
Sure.
would like make something less interesting right now. You know, I'd rather go on a limb right now or release a record for free and not be so concerned, you know,
Right,
that sort
right.
of thing. So yeah, you know, I think, you know, at some point this is my project that will probably go on forever.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And I don't know if I'll be touring actively like this, and I don't know if it will always sound like this.
Right, right.
So I am, you know, I have ideas down the road what it could be like or
Sure.
where it could go, definitely. But for right now, you know, it's definitely like I'm not like ever paranoid of like, oh, how can I not get back to a day job? If I have to work in 2 years in the cubicle, then
You're good.
that's all good. You know, it's not
Right.
like the end of the world for me.
So talk to me a little bit about the creative process. How long does it take you to put together a CD, an album? And are you thinking about that all the time in terms of your next one?
Yeah, but you know, the last album took me 2.5 years.
Yep.
So it's like that album wrapped up in November.
And that's all day.
Yeah,
Okay.
all day. And so that one wrapped up in November, and now it's February now, kind of go on tour. So it's like all the stuff I work on immediately after the album comes out, and that's like the next week. You know, I just keep going. I'm not thinking about the next album at all, because I know it's like could be 2-3 years down the road.
Right.
I just start thinking about the live show. You know, kind of coming out with
Okay.
different pieces, and it's a big trial and error process of just trying out
Right.
all of these different combinations of material.
Right.
And when I find something that sticks or something that's interesting, I'll try to incorporate that into the show.
Right.
And then in the live setting, the set kind of changes little bits night to night. And I trigger every sample by hand, but I do kind of come up with most of the arrangements beforehand.
Okay.
So I have an idea of where I want to go with it. But yeah, so I'm always building on these new ideas. And I think any given show, there's going to be a piece that I may play once that
Right.
maybe never's played again.
Okay.
And there's nights where I'm playing something for the first time, and I really like the way it sounds, and the response is really good, and then I build
Right.
from there.
Right.
So by the time I sit down to do an album, I kind of have a lot of ideas in place, like 50 to 75% of the record. Like, here's where it's going to begin, here's where
Right.
it's going to end. During the show, this transitioning into this went really well.
Right, right.
So yeah, it's kind of mapped out like that, and then I build like chronologically, beginning to end. So
Okay.
anytime there's a gap where I don't know what's going to be there, I kind of will make that part up on the spot.
Right.
But yeah, you know, it takes me typically 2 years to prep, and then when I'm sitting down to do a record, if I have a good day, I typically work 10 to 12 hours. It will be 1 minute of music, and that
Really?
period is a good day. That's
Wow.
always the goal. And then you know, if I don't get the minute, it's a little bit of a bummer. And
Right.
it's rare, you know, to get 2 minutes or something like the greatest day that happens like once or twice during the process.
Wow. So I might be reading into it a little bit more, but when I was listening to All Day, I've listened to all your stuff. it felt like it had a little more of an old school feel to it for some reason. I mean, is that what you intended? Do you have an intention like that, or is it just kind of whatever flows for you? Like I heard all Hall and Oates and a lot of old stuff that I actually love.
Yeah, I think definitely going into the albums, a big thing for me is naturally I have to have enough material. So I'm always working on stuff, and I get to the point where I have enough material, but then. Kind of bigger than that for me is conceptually, like where could this go? How could this be different? I never want the albums just to be like, Girl Talk Party to Go series, volume 1 through 3. I want them to be distinct albums with distinct characters. So with the new one, it's always calculated to like go somewhere new, and to me, I wanted to just make it more dynamic, and that meant like wider array of source material, wider range of tempo, wider range of sample length, like some big chunks and some small chunks. So all of that, and I think even going into this project over the years, it's kind of constantly exploring deeper and deeper and deeper, and I want it to be, I even feel like, Night Ripper, which I love, is very focused on like a lot of 90s elements.
Yes.
And on the new one, I definitely think it was calculated to jump around a bit more.
Right.
So that's definitely something that goes into it, and even, every decision is pretty thought out, because there was so many, almost every decision, there's so many other options, like instead of that Peter Gabriel track, it could have been one of 10 80s songs that fit there, and that was the one that conceptually worked for me, musically worked for me on all these different levels.
So I've seen you in concert. You're a very different guy right now than what I see in concert. You're like a wild man out there. How do you prep up for it? Does the music take you there? Or?
Usually because I have a couple people who come out on stage with me and help out, so we kind of prep together. We honestly, it's usually pretty low key before the show, and we stretch for a while because it is very physical.
Yes, it is.
And that's it. I feel like we're all like we rarely are like psyching each other up like before a football game or something like that. Way you see, so it's usually we're kind of chilling out, and then I think the moment, like the 5 minutes before the show, it's like when we're out near the stage, it's kind of like the moment that you walk on the stage, it's like something else happens, you know. And it's something I've done so much that I definitely feel like it's me, and it's a part of me, but it's also like immediate. Like I don't have to think about it. I'm never worried. Am I ready? Am I psyched up? And it's like it doesn't matter because it's like I've done it a lot. I know the way I'm gonna do it out there, and naturally it's like you go out there and a bunch of people are screaming. People paid money to be at this concert, been anticipating it for a while. It's like it's impossible to not be motivated when you see that. So especially because for the first 6 years of doing this, I used to drive 8 hours to play for 12 people who didn't care. You know what I mean? So having that under your belt, I feel like is anytime it's always a good reference point. You know what I mean? It's very fortunate that this venue's filled up right now. We're able to play this size. So and then it comes out, and I definitely think it's part performance, but it's definitely like it's an aspect of me that I don't get to like do very often other than out there.
You consider yourself a DJ, performer? What are you? A musician? How would you describe yourself?
It's tough. I've never really related to traditional DJ role, mainly because in the early days, and I guess this goes on a few levels, but like with the albums and with the shows, I've never in the 10 years of doing this have ever just played an unaltered song. I've never just played one. So it's always like a remix and a reinterpretation. The goal is always to make something new, transformative. So because of that, it is kind of related to production a little bit more. So I don't know if it'd be called a musician, but it's like, to me, the processes I use live and how the ideas behind it is similar to any electronic musician or hip-hop producer. You're trying to make something new out of these samples. And along with that, in the early days, I never like played at a dance club with DJs or anything like that. It was always billed as a live act on stage with bands or a rapper or whatever. So that was always the thing. So actually when Night Ripper started to kind of build a little bit and I started getting more show offers, I got a lot of offers and they were like, come DJ this party. And it was like, well, why am I getting this offer? I've never been offered to like DJ a party before. So it was like this weird new thing. And from that day forward, I kind of stuck to like, we're going to avoid those and still do a show and try to make a spectacle out of it. Framing this to context is really fun to me because it's like this could have gone many different ways, but I've actively tried to frame it along with the artwork, the presentation of the show to be an original thing based on other people's music, which is part of the fun. Just kind of recontextualizing the idea of what this could be.
Gotcha. So you a commentator?
A bit.
I mean, you're a satirist.
Not of the music, maybe of the of the idea of performance.
Right.
You know, so to me, it's like I grew up with a lot of electronic music.
Yep.
So I love Kraftwerk and things like that.
Kraftwerk.
You know, and these are the people who were, you know, in the 70s were the first people on stage rocking computers. And to me, that's awesome. They're going somewhere that people haven't gone before.
Yeah.
So with all music, that's always an important aspect to me. Where can we go that hasn't been gone before?
Right.
And obviously everything relates to something before. So this isn't going to come out of thin air. But at the same time, you know, having a big spectacle that's like a Kiss rock and roll show that's based around again remixing music, to me is like an interesting little thing. You know, it relates to many other people doing things, but you know, I'm trying to put my own spin on it, and that's always been the focus. I think with all of my musical projects, I don't know music in the traditional way. So I think my whole life, from the moment I was 14 on, I was always thinking conceptually, like, what can we do? You know, that's absolutely, you know, potentially hasn't been done, or what can we do that's going to make people think, or what's going to make people argue, and you know, what's going to generate discussion.
I like that. So, talk to me about some more influences. You mentioned Kraftwerk. I definitely Hall & Oates is in there because I hear Hall & Oates a lot in your stuff. But any other influences?
Yeah, I mean, everything I sample naturally. I mean, it's like Hall & Oates is some of my parents' favorite music.
Oh,
right now,
so man, so you sound like your parents.
No, not at all. No, so I grew up. It was funny because I grew up with Hall & Oates, and naturally, like when you're a teenager, you like hate what your parents are into or whatever. So I was like hating on Hall & Oates so bad.
Were you really?
And then, you know, at some point, you know, I was like reached a maturity level to take Hall & Oates in and love it. You know, so yeah, you know, all of that. And, you know, from the electronic standpoint, you know, I love a lot of hip hop production, and I grew up listening to a lot of '90s stuff. So it was like stuff like De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising, and Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys. And to me, those are like, you know, templates for what I'm doing. You know, just the style, the samples constantly moving. You don't really hear hip hop records like that so much anymore. And I love newer stuff, but that's just an awesome production style to me. And stuff like that. And then there's also the more experimental realm, like guys like Negative Land and John Oswald and Kid 606, and that's kind of what really got me inspired to be like, I could be like one of those people. So, you know, which again, you know, that's a lot more experimental music. You know, that's kind of what the earlier stuff was based around.
I had someone earlier today stop me and say, Dean, make sure you ask him, where's Girl Talk come from? Where's the name come from?
Yeah, I think when I was getting started, you know, I knew I'd be playing with a variety of people, but I was also a fan of laptop music and live electronic music. And I'd go see those shows, and I knew I'd be playing shows with those people. And a lot of that world was people who sit there and stare at the computer and sit down, and this is the performance, and it's very serious. And, you know, they maybe have no background in music, but it's coming across as an academic sort of way. You know what I mean? You can never tell, and it's very serious sometimes. And I'm fine with that, you know what I mean? But I just knew that wasn't going to be what I was going to do. And a lot of times those people had band names that were like made up words, or like TX_QR, you know what I mean? So I was like wanted to pick something that was very different than that, and I wanted to pick something that sounded like not like a guy playing a computer.
Okay.
So Girl Talk to me just sounded like a Disney group or something. So I thought that would be like the perfect like antithesis to that scene.
Right. And I think people also think at first you're a band with like 12 guys on stage.
No, it was always, you know, because the band I was in high school prior to this, because I started this basically right when I entered college.
Okay.
Was very, you know, performance art based, and you know, we would just do anything. You know, performances would be like getting up there and smashing TVs for 20 minutes. You know, it was just far out stuff. So it was kind of like having that as my background. I really had the confidence to say anything could be a performance. You know, me remixing pop music can be a performance. I was committed to that idea that, you know, no matter if people are weirded out or hating on it or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's like, you know, I've seen I was dedicated to the underground music scene at that point. I've just seen so much weird stuff on stage, and people go so far out with it that it's like, that's exciting to me, and I like pushing those buttons. So, you know, from the moment I started Girl Talk and started remixing, the performance was like actively on my mind, like excited to get to the performance moment.
So, take a few questions.
Sure.
So we're going to go online. If you have a question, just go ahead and tweet me at Dean Elmore, and we'll be more than happy to maybe pose a question or two. Or if you're following the Ustream, the live stream, you can just go right in the chat and ask a question. Kat, we've got any questions?
Not yet.
Okay, no questions yet, so I'm going to keep going. Have you got a favorite? You got a baby? You got a song that you really you say, this is my jam, in terms of something you put together?
Oh, wow.
You got one of those you say, that's my jam
I'd have to say, you know, and this is like more of like, and it's funny because there's such an interaction between the fans and the creative process, because I hear live shows, it impacts what it's going to go on the record and influences my mind.
Right.
And also, I feel like going into the album Night Ripper, there was one part in the record that I really loved, but I just saw it, on a lot of it, I want it to be slightly, not perfect, you know what I mean? I didn't want it to be like this flawless, I wanted to be abrasive at times, and there was one moment that was kind of flowing so well, I was like, is this going to be too much for people? Is this like too, I don't want to say corny or anything, but I was like, is this too smooth sounding for the record? And it was the moment with Notorious B.I.G.'s Juicy and Elton John's Tiny Dancer and drums from a Nirvana song called Seven Sopranos. And when I put it out there, I was kind of worried, and I almost took that off the album at the last minute. And then when it came out, that became like the part everyone was excited about. And I was like, awesome, because I really liked it myself.
Right.
And then the shows, it became the part. And I would have to say, at this part, if there is a single in the Girl Talk world, like a mix that people are really know and excited about, that was kind of like the breakthrough single.
Right.
So to this day, I'll play it some nights, not play it other nights, but when I play it, it's kind of like, that's like a classic in Girl Talk world,
Right.
So, that one always means a lot to me, because I was, it was like, that was a good, process for me too, just to realize, you got to kind of go with your instinct and not be so concerned about, the way it's going to be perceived, which is always, a good thing to know.
So when you put the show, when you were out there trying to, you trying to make people move, you're trying to make people jump, you're trying to make people get on stage.
Yeah.
Have you got? Is it what you feel like you're gonna really feel, or you're trying to really go for what the audience, how you read the audience that night?
Yeah, I think the album and that show are a bit different that way, because I feel like the show I am catering more towards the audience a little bit, and catering to the idea that it's going to be a party and people are going to be dancing.
Right.
Whereas on the album, that's an element of it, but I also feel like I can indulge a little bit more in some slightly obscure samples, like not totally obscure, just a little bit more far off. And even on the album, I can do some mellow moments and things that are a bit more chilled out, because it's not like a raging party.
Right.
Whereas live, I know it's like tough to translate those soft moments, and I try to fit them in there quick,
Right.
So yeah, during the show, it's the sort of thing where it's exciting, because when I do something on the record that is maybe a little bit more obscure and people aren't familiar with, or a mellow part on the record, now when I play it live, people are waiting to hear that. So it's kind of like live, the stuff from the album, people automatically react to elements from the album, and then when there's new stuff, it's really got to be kind of high intensity to generate a similar reaction from the album material. So yeah, it's a sort of thing where you do enough shows, and some nights there's stuff that it's really just a slope, what I mean, where it's like, I like something, but I didn't like the way people respond to it. It might not be the material, it might be like where it went. It could have a better location or different production on it. So even when something doesn't hit with the audience, in my mind, the first thing is like, I can do it better or do it differently to make it hit, because if I was into it musically. So I'm definitely thinking about them, but there's a lot of moments where, at this point, the crowds range, from like 15 to 60, just out there, so it's like tough to like pinpoint what is people are they going to recognize. I'm obviously referencing music that I know, and I'm a specific age and went through a specific life listening to music, so it's going to be very different than anyone else out there. So it's hard to know, like, this is going to be the one that like everyone's going to flip over. So can't really be so concerned with appealing to every single person at once.
You seem like you have a good time out there too. Are you having a good time, or is this serious thinking that's going on, especially if you got to hand pick all your samples?
It's kind of like it's like when you see anyone perform, and that goes from sports to music, it's like you're doing a task that may be difficult for you, and if you're doing it well, because it is, when I'm triggering the samples, some nights go better than others, and some nights I get, maybe there's an off night a little bit where something I trigger wrong, and then it gets in my head, and I start like triggering other things slightly wrong, and other nights the flow's there, and I'm getting really into it, and I get motivated naturally when I see the people, and I bring some people on stage, and they're interacting, so it's hard to not go crazy with them, but also, when the show's going well and it's going smooth, it motivates me, and all of this stuff, there's so much work put into getting to this point, and bringing the whole crew and everything like that, all of that, knowing that there's like 12 people working on the show gets me psyched to just knock it out of the park. And I've played most cities on this tour many times. I've been in Boston many times over the year, and I want every time to be the best time. You know what I mean? And I'm very critical of myself and competitive with myself because of that. So it's like when I come back here, I'm psyched for when I hit that stage to try to take it somewhere that they haven't gone before.
Sure. So why do you think you stay relevant? I mean, this stuff is pretty relevant. You're getting a bigger and bigger following. You know, I know old men who listen to you when they're out for their runs. You know, my wife, who can be pretty traditional about stuff, she loves your music. My kids love your music. They think it's really cool. Yeah, you know, what do you think you're tapping into here?
You know, I think at least with Night Ripper at that time, it was, you know, I think that was an album that people hadn't heard conceptually so much. Again, there's so many things that relate to it, but as far as like distinct loops, a bunch of pop music done in a way that's kind of progressive and crazy and crammed together, but is still accessible, I think that was kind of new for a lot of people. And then from there, I've really been trying to take that template and build, and you know, not make it tired, not try to recycle the same thing, use that basic idea, but then really build on it. And yeah, I don't know. You know, it's really hard for me to define why this is going the way it is. You know, I kind of understand the initial excitement over it, and I'm proud of the new work. I think like each album, I always want it to be the best. You know, I feel that they get better as they go along. I know some people disagree with that.
Really?
But you know, that's the way it is. So yeah, you know, it's a funny thing because leading into the new album, you know, I've been doing shows, and you know, with me, there's a label that releases my stuff, but it's just really one guy and his friends, and there's no like marketing team, and there's no press going into this album. So kind of leading into the new album, I knew that the fans were excited. I knew those people are excited. I hear from them on Facebook, hear from them.
You crashed the internet for a day.
But that was the thing. That was like a total surprise because it was like we prepared two to three times the amount of like server power to host this album.
Right. And
we were like, that's going to be good compared to the last album.
Right.
So we were like, how could it be more than 2 to 3 times the interest from the last album? Because it's been going better, but there's been no peak. You know, it just keeps, you know, shows get a little bigger. So we thought that was fine, and then the moment the album was released, the response was just extremely overwhelming. And like, you know, you can look at your stats on Google, your search index and stuff, and like the search index was like 10 times what it had ever been. And I honestly can't define why that happened. You know, I think it's like a critical mass though, where the name's out there for so long. People hear about it, and some people are into it, and some people are reluctant to get into it. And then maybe after 5 years of hearing about it, all of a sudden it's like, maybe I'll check this out finally. So I think that's kind of what it had to be, because there's really no other way for me to explain the level of excitement over that release versus the other one. But it's exciting, you know, and I think it goes to, you know, doing the shows, building the hype. People talk, and that's, you know, that's the basis of internet hype and all of that. You know, it's people talking, and there's no better way to do it than in person. So, you know, I feel like I've just gone hard at, you know, working and constantly being on the road, and I think that's just, you know, kept people excited in it. And
you're on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I'm relatively.
What do you think about that?
You know, I did it because I thought I should do it. I should say it first. You know, it wasn't like, oh, Twitter, awesome, and that's no diss towards Twitter. But I was just like, I guess I should have to do this. You know. But now, you know, it is entertaining, and you know, there's definitely some people who have great Twitters. But it's a funny thing because I still, even now, don't understand why. You know, it's so popular. And again, it's not a diss, but to me, like Facebook or something is instantly entertaining, and I see how you can get your day sucked up in that. It's amazing, you know. Twitter's a little bit different, where I like it, and I enjoy doing it myself. You know, it's a fun way to, you know, I wish I had this, you know, 10 years, you know, when I was getting going. It's fun. But yeah, it's just crazy to me how much of a phenomenon it is. But you know, you know, it's just an ongoing conversation, I guess. And it is exciting to read some people that you are interested in what they're doing on a very mundane, day-to-day level. You know, I guess that's cool. You know.
Hey, we got any questions, Kath?
Not yet.
All right, so this is going to be the last question because we do have to wrap it up. So, if you had to give somebody advice about, I mean, you're a guy who followed along, maybe a bit of a dream, took a risk, those sorts of things. Somebody who thinks they want to maybe do what you do, or, I don't know, do anything else, just that good piece of knowledge you drop on anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's funny because people do email me and say, how can I do this? And it's like, it's tough for me to answer that, because I think there's so many different ways you can approach music or getting started, and different intentions. I think they're all valid. You know, if you want to be a studio musician and make money and go to school, that's cool. If you want to be a crazy experimental avant-garde noise artist, that's cool. You know, it's like there's just different intentions. So like the intentions behind this project were never really to be where it's at now. I'm beyond happy that it got this big, but it's, you know, totally surreal, and there was never seemed like even a reasonable option. There was no template to get there. So like all of the music and all of the decisions based on the music were always based around just trying to be innovative or interesting or creative, as opposed to, you know, appealing to people. So and that's why it worked for me. You know, so it worked out for me by not really caring about it working. So, and I don't think that's, you know...
So it's more heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, it's tough to give that as advice to make it, because I think, you know, if you can go off and make a lot of crazy stuff, and obviously there's a good chance people aren't going to get into it, you know. But yeah, I just think you have to understand what you want to get out of it, and if you want to, you know, try to replicate what's popular and do exactly that, then good luck doing that. That's fine, too, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think just for music in general, it's fun, though, to, like, you know, now with the internet, it's so easy to get your 15 minutes of fame very quick, and you can get a buzz track, and I think it's hard not to hunt for that as a kid or a young person growing music. Anything you do, you know, can become a viral hit. It's possible, and we've seen it happen so many times.
Sure.
That it's, you know, it's tough to say that, you know, get it in your mind, but it's cool to maybe not be so concerned about that, and just have the freedom to take a step back and say, you know, what hasn't been done, and where can I step in, where can I fit into, you know, taking it to that next level.
That's probably good advice for anything you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, any secrets you want to tell us about for tonight's show? Anything you give us a little in?
Yeah.
For anybody who might be coming tonight, sorry if you're not coming. I got my ticket. I'll be here. But anybody who might be coming tonight, and I know a lot of Boston University students are definitely coming to your show tonight, and certainly a lot of students in Boston will be there.
Yeah, I think this tour is as distinctly different, the show, than any other time I've been out. So for the people who've seen a Girl Talk show before, I do think like this is a newer thing. You know, even we were in New York a couple of nights ago, and I have a lot of friends who've seen shows for 10 years now,
Right.
you know, and they are all just kind of like, whoa, like, this is something else. You know, I just think it's become, the show in the past was kind of known for being raw and for being, you know, pretty minimal, me and a table, and that's it.
Right.
Whereas now, you know, it's built up, and the venues have gotten bigger, and I want to, you know, accommodate that and make it be appropriate for that size. So you know, the show now, it's like I still do everything live on the fly, but there are more cue points and some more rehearsed, and there's props. There's a lot of everything, and everything's a bit more in sync. And, you know, from the lighting guy to the LED wall guy to the prop guy to all of that, you know, they have different cues and different things. So there's a bit more of a, you know, predetermined flow that we try to hit. And things change every night, so, you know, you just never know, you know, what exactly it will be like tonight.
Hey, well, thanks. You've been great to do this with us.
Thank
we
you,
appreciate
man.
it.
Appreciate it.
I'm here with Girl Talk, Gregg Gillis, and we are at the House of Blues where he'll be performing tonight. And I hope for those of you who will be here, you're going to have a great time. And for those of you who had a chance to look at this, continue the conversation, and maybe start following Gregg. It's The Real Girl Talk on Twitter, and keep that conversation going. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good.
All good. Yeah.
Great. Fantastic.
Thank you, guys.
That was great.
It was fun.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
That was